Welcome back to the channel. Today we're at the Le Mans 24 hours, just bringing you the 30 minutes of Le Mans. This is a race we've run probably 30 times in the last month, recreating or attempting to set up the recreation of the movie from a couple of years ago of Ford versus Ferrari. We raced all the way through with a number of road cars, then we went to the historics, and at the circuit, where there's been 15 different layouts since 1923, it consists of 33 turns and running a clockwise direction. It's 13.626 kilometres long and contains multiple corners where I've named them incorrectly. And for those of you that really know the track, those names are there in front of us. I think there was only one where I actually got it right every time, and that was the Mulsanne Straight. And I did take a stab at the Porsche curves at one point in time, but never knew that to be the case. And that's my haphazard style, which brings us to the review of the movie itself. Matt Damon and Christian Bale set up as Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles. You see Carroll Shelby stood in front of the Cobra there at Willow Springs, racing against Ken Miles, and Ken Miles sets up this old hapless way to win the race, but he's in charge of a garage at home, a private little establishment that's running foul of the taxman. The movie depicts the P4 330 against the GT40, where the P330 tends to do a lot of crashing. And then for the end of the movie, it depicts the GT40 stacked up against the team from the USA, where they managed to recreate the victory by staging a victory which puts Carroll Shelby out of the picture. But is that important? As we come to the race today, we're actually going to take two runs against a custom race against the GT40, not the one in the image, and the P330 or the P4 330. The GT Mark IV in the image here is set up in such a way that it runs well in the weather, and it has a lower top speed than the actual car, its opposition in the race. Gran Turismo really does set up the images nicely in the game. It really gives you a good feel for the car, and it represents really well the image of the car in the race. Even though I can't really get my head around who's what in the race in terms of what car models, because they use the more classic GT40 model that we see or we know of. Yet we have this version here, which is Foyt's car from the race. A really good rendition of it. I find it drives really well, and you can watch that race as its own individual one on the channel. As we move across to the P4 330, which I always call the P330, you can see it's equally well modelled in the game. The noise, the sound is what makes this car for most. What we aim to do with this little 30 minutes is pitch the two cars against each other in a custom race where they go head to head from the start line against the same field of cars, which we reviewed every car for you and did a little demo and a setup so that you can actually go and take part yourself and create your own custom race. The idea was that we pitch each one against each other in ideal conditions and see if we can prove the correct victory for the 1967 race that was projected in the film. Although we can't do that explicitly, it's just a little play, just a little something to keep us interested in game and keep us playing. So with that, we're going to dive straight into the race, and as we go off the line, I'll give you a full race commentary. So as we go across the line, you can see the top left-hand corner is the Ford Racing GT40 Mark IV, and the bottom right-hand corner is the P3. They're cockpit views only, and although ultimately the text is a little bit too small to read, I'll try and give you the best coverage. So they're very close going over the line. You can see each one is in 20th position against a full field of Le Mans racers. You might need to watch this a couple of times through to keep up with it, but we see the P330 go ahead down the right hand side and then absolutely hammer the back end of his teammate. In terms of position, the P330 or the P4 is now up to 19th, so is the 40, up to 17th for the P4, 16th for the P4 as he gets away down the straight, probably 10 car lengths ahead of the GT40. Going past the Porsche in the bottom right hand window now, setting off down the straight. And what speed is the P4 going to get to? Already The GT40 is up to 185 and much quicker than the P30 down the straight. As you can see him go past on the right hand side, Mr. McLaren and Dano. It's Donahue. So they're just about level pegging, coming back onto the Mulsanne straight, heading down towards the Michelin chicane. And I can't tell you which one's ahead of which. The GT40 goes ravelling past the P4. Now approaching the braking zone, and they're pretty much neck and neck. Really is quite head confusing as to where we are in the race, but you can see they're pretty much level pegging as they come out of the corners. How is this going to turn out, this race? So we know we've set up the custom race that they're going to have equal weather, but what we set up in the race for equal weather doesn't actually come to fore, because there's multiple variations of the weather within the setup. You could put for various types of weather, you could leave it so it chooses the weather, but I actually set it. The actual Mark IV's now taken the lead as they peg off down Ford. Let's call Golf this section of the track. The Mark IV gets into this corner just before the P4, as the P4 overtakes the Jaguar there, the D-Type. Coming down to Arnage. This is the most tricky corner in the game for anybody coming into here. Breaking down to second gear. As you can see, they enter so tight into that turn. There isn't much room between the two. P330 just gets ahead in acceleration into that corner. You can hear the sound of the P4 way over the sound of the Mark 40. The P4 now ekes its way ahead again, just ahead. Coming to the corners. We're about 3/4 of the way through the circuit now. Just approaching the final few curves. This is the Porsche curves as we head round for the end of lap 1. Skies are pretty much clear and weather is equal in both videos. P4 still just a couple of car lengths ahead. Two cars head into the pit lane already in the Ford race. And the P4 just sits ahead. So that's the end of lap 1. We don't get any indicators of time. But as we've said, the P4 seems to be sitting just ahead, which is probably quite reminiscent of the race in '67. It all depends which view you take, whether you take the view from the movie or real life. We know the GT40 in real life wins it. We know that was the car of the day. Just like to take a little bit of the poetic license to the film and make it feel quite as warm and woolly as it was. So the P4 330 now starts to accelerate away down the Mulsanne straight as the GT40 is struggling to get past the D-Type in 5th place. The P330 in their race is up to 3rd as they're going to brake for this corner at the end of the Mulsanne straight, hitting 171. Already the GT40 is up to 190 as it ticks into the braking zone. 193 as it hits the brakes. Still competing with that Jaguar that is oh so quick. There's still only 5 car lengths between the two. So indicators of time from the first lap there on the screen. The P3 comes in with a 4:14.629 and the Mark IV comes in with a 4:16.517. So just about 2 seconds ahead was the P4 330. The difference is probably 10 car lengths at this time. Just like to sit and listen to the sound of the engine. The Mark IV loses out of place there, back to a P4. As the P4 accelerates out of that Mulsanne corner. Getting down Golf and getting on with the lap. This is the second lap. Both cars have now changed to their weather radar. Looking for the rain, trying to anticipate where it's coming from. And as you can see on the Mark IV, top left-hand corner, the rain has appeared in the top left-hand corner, the northeast corner of the radar, as he jiggles and fights with a Jag and a P4. Ducks into that corner, third gear down a second. Only about 3 to 4 car lengths ahead is the P4. This is such a tight race. The only thing that can really decide is the weather, one would suggest. So it's a good old strong rain cloud looking like it's coming in for the GT40. Whilst we call it the Mark IV, in my head it's known as a GT40 because that was the development car, wasn't it? All the way through the movie they used the GT40 as the development car, and it did lead on to this model, this race car, this full-blown race car. We're not talking about Carroll Shelby so much in this clip. He has his own place in racing history with what happened and where he went. There's a big series of YouTube video about the Shelby GT350 at the moment, which I'm really interested in watching. And at this point, the P4 has really started to pull out a lead as the GT40, the Mark IV, goes straight into the pits. Rain is on its way, so he's taking the racing tyres and he's going to fill up with fuel. So the advantage is going to be with the P4. There's definitely rain in the air in the GT40 race, but not in the P4's race as he starts to battle. He's in 4th place, 14 seconds down on the leaders. The GT40 some 16 seconds down as he sits in the pits there on 42% fuel. The P4 has such better use of fuel. He's only 50% done. He's going to get 4 laps out of this fuel. Tyres not showing a massive amount of wear. But it is greying over. You can see that rain is visibly falling in the pit stall of the Mark IV. As the P4 heads on down the Mulsanne straight, is he taking a risk with rain? Can't see any on his radar, but it is really starting to look heavy for the GT40 now. As he exits the pit lane and starts to make the first couple of corners, he's down in 19th place. This can't be good. A real bad indicator for the GT40 so early in the race. And it really is starting to rain. It's lashing it down. You can hear it almost drowning out the engine noise at the P4. The GT40 now making his way out of Tetra Rouge, down out to make the turn onto the Mulsanne straight and to really get the power down, but he won't be getting top speed. It's starting to look hazy and misty for the P4. Here's the GT40 going on now, just pulling past a pair of Porsches, 160 mile an hour in 5th gear. As the GT40 makes its way into the Michelin chicane, the second chicane on the Mulsanne straight, and the rain is bagging down as the GT40 makes its way into a period of yellow cloud, which just absolutely lashing down. And the top speed is really curtailed as he starts to overtake cars that are really struggling. The P4 now gets into the Mulsanne corner at the very end of the Mulsanne straight after the Mulsanne kink, and now away down Golf. He's in 4th place though, still 14 seconds behind the leaders. It doesn't look quite such an easy race against this field of cars, does it? GT40 now making his way into that Michelin chicane as 3 cars make their way from the gravel trap back onto the circuit. Look like Dan Gurney there, just struggling to get the car back on track. Into 6th place from 18th, quite impressive. So currently fastest lap of the race sits with Mr. Oh, it's different in each race. You've got 4:04.912 for the German pairing of somebody and Muller. I can't read that, it's too small. And then in the GT40 race, you've got Sutcliffe and somebody else with a 4:07.073. Neither car in the videos is actually achieving anything of that sort of difference. The P4 330 up to 4:11, and he's got rain on the rain radar now. It's coming in really strongly on his, I'd say, partially worn tyres. He's going to have to look to make his way to the pit as he slams the wall at the end of the Porsche curves. He's got 1.1 laps of fuel there, but is he going to risk it, or is he going to take to the pit lane? So the GT40 Racing now makes his way into position 1 with all the cars struggling in the wet weather. Now the interesting thing, the P4 goes to the pits. So who's going to come out in first place after these pit stops? This is the difference. It looks like the P4 has got the advantage, having run so much longer in the dry. There's the buzzer, the pit crew making their way out. Of course, I always take the opportunity for a drink when we pit, so I've got double the chance on this one. The Mark IV just making his way into the start of the Porsche curves. The P4 330 has yet to make his way to the pit stall. Here he is, just arriving. Going to change to full wets. And it looks like on the top left-hand corner, the end of the heavy rain is about to come. That's going to be about it, one would suggest. The Mark IV making his way round to the start of the pit lane. We can see the fuel going into the P4. That's him done and away he goes. So he exits the pit lane in what looks like 2nd place in the race. I'm just looking to see if I can make out the leader's name, which is really poor, but the screen is really quite small. It looks like Beauvoir and Sanson, the French team. Interesting to realise what car it is they are in. So the GT40 now comes across the line, probably some 400-500 yards behind as the P4 goes through Tetra Rouge. And it does looks like a Porsche 904. It is, that's leading the race. And the P4 now picks up the lead as he's about to overtake him onto the Mulsanne. Yeah, it's Boulin and Sanson. So both cars now in the lead of the race. The rain looking like it's pretty much equal for both of the drivers now. Heavy downpour in the Mark IV race. That heavy downpour is just about to start now for the P4. Top speed difference is going to be the major factor here. Oh, the Porsche is coming back at the P4. No real calamity though as they make their way around that corner. P4 now accelerates down the Mulsanne straight. Mulsanne? Mulsanne. I'll get it right one day. The GT40 now coming down to the first corner complex, hitting 186 miles an hour as he hits the brakes. Is it going to be a struggle to get it stopped and slowed down? Now he's got it down at 70. Equal conditions for both drivers. Pretty much wet tyres are the primary tyre for both. P4 now heading his way through the Mulsanne kink down to Mulsanne, the 90-degree right-hander, which is really quite a slow corner considering the speed at the end of the straight here. 175 mile an hour, 179, just touches 180. Or the GT40 just gets a little kink and almost bounces off the fence. That could be a transition. It is. There's an error there as he goes across the white line, and attracts himself a slowdown penalty of 3 seconds for crossing track limits. These aren't the standard straightforward stop at the penalty line slowdown penalties. These are actually slow down as you go, so you have to slow down an acceleration straight. It won't allow you to do it in the braking zone. The P4 now coming down to a slow at the end of Arnage, at the end of Golf. Makes his way through those corners down to second gear. The GT40 is now just at Mulsanne, so there's a whole straight length of Golf between the two cars. The GT40 has got so much to make up. Oh, P4's just missed his braking zone. He's off the track. The Mark IV's now slipped his penalty, and they're both back head to head. Whilst the rain clouds in different directions, you can see on the radar they're both about to get the same sort of heavy weather. The rain's about to get so much heavier. The GT40 still has that ability to run the faster straight line time. Even in the wet, the speed is much higher. P4 now into the Porsche curves, making his way through, having to really slow down for those, and heading out to the right side. It could, almost a transgression into the penalty zone. We know the P4 has got the tyres and the fuel now. He's going to carry on. P4 coming through to take the flag with just 12 minutes to go as he moves on to lap 5. P4 now just taking its time around these corners. Mark IV coming up to the start-finish straight, just about to go past the pit lane entry. He's not in need of tyres, he's not in need of fuel. Just having to significantly slow down as he comes into this complex. These two chicanes just before the start-finish line really do slow the cars up, but it gives the crowd in the stands the opportunity to hear that raucous roar of both car engines. Much deeper engine note though in the GT40. You can just hear the drone of it as it goes through the start-finish straight. The B4 now heads onto onto the Mulsanne straight, just as what appears to be the end of the rain, and the same for the Mark IV as he comes out of the pit complex, coming up the hill, heading towards Tetra Rouge. So equal conditions. The P4 is now a full length of the first section of Mulsanne away. The GT40 really is starting to rein him back in. We've got probably one pit stop left each, where the guys will have to come off wet and go to the race tyres. So it's not over yet. They think it is, but it certainly isn't. So that's laps. The P4 put in a 4:59.040, but the Mark IV put in a 4:50. So it's pretty much 9 seconds between the two. Even though the GT40 has got the slowest lap time, one was a pit in, one wasn't. So that's the difference. They pretty much have very similar slower lap times with a pit in. The P4 a 4:59.040 and the Mark IV with a 4:59.282. So just ahead for the P4 based on their pit out laps. Mark IV's just gone through the Mulsanne kink, just coming down to Mulsanne, the 90 right. Those wet tyres finding all the grip that they need in the drying track, even though it's not drying that much. Still very cloudy and dark. The Mark IV makes his way out of the Michelin chicane, coming down to the Mulsanne kink as he makes his way past here. The Mark IV just starting to see what could be the first of the lap cars. Yeah, the race is panning out very differently for both. Oh, it's a P4 as well, going very slow around the apex, as though that car is on the wrong tyre type. Oh, and he gets a little reminder as the Mark IV goes past, and his own pride is not going to let him sit behind Mr. Class and Mr. Sutcliffe, who are the holders of the fastest lap of the race, come back to life as the Mark IV goes past him. That gives us a glorious sight at the rear end of the P4. You can see that spare wheel lodged away into the back corner, the back set over the engine of the car, or over the gearbox, one should say. As it comes to brake into the corner, we can see other tail enders in front. The Mark IV really is starting to claw in the P330. It really is starting to claw it back. There's a whole kerfuffle of cars here in front of the Mark IV. It looks like they're all on the wrong tyres. They all start to wheel spin and slide all over the place. So which one is going to the pits first? The Mark IV looks like he's short on fuel as he gets overtaken. A lot of the team now coming into the pits off their wet tyres. Yes, the P4 has gone to the pits now to shed that set of wets and to flick back to dries. He's had the benefit of an extra lap of dry weather at this point. There's the buzzer for a quick slurp on the drink while one team goes in. The Mark IV just coming round to the pit lane straight. Oh, he just clips the back of the Mark IV there. Looking to take another line, and one hopes he's not going to get blocked out here from the pit lane. There's a bit of argy-bargy. Is he going to slide past the side of the Jag? He is. Oh, and he gets spun out by the Jag in pit lane. That's an absolute shocker. That's not what we need at this point. He's off down an escape road. There's at least 10 seconds lost there. The Mark IV has now finished fueling the P4 has now finished fueling as the Mark IV enters the pit lane. Takes the buzzer and the Mark IV is off and away. 6 minutes 30 seconds remaining in the race. It's a long way for the Mark IV. That could be the error that leads to the P4 330 Ferrari taking the victory. The writing's pretty much on the wall. How much faster can the Mark IV go than the P4? Can the P4 now hold it off with the race tyres on the wet circuit, because it's not really 100% ready for race tyres as yet. Mark IV now taking the fuel. How much fuel is he going to take? Is he going to take just enough for the 2 laps, or is he taking the lot? He's going to take the lot and up the fuel map, one would expect. So as the Mark IV comes from the pit lane, the P330 is now heading down the Mulsanne straight. That's the gap. The Mark IV's got a long way to go to get its way back in. Both cars are actually leading the race. Mark IV disappears under the Dunlop Bridge, and not for the last time, one would suggest. There's going to be at least one more lap here. Through Eau Rouge. It's not Eau Rouge, it's Arnage. Come on. Eau Rouge is at Spa, that's where we're going next month. Oh. The brain says, well, the mouth says what the brain thinks, but sometimes the mouth wins the fight. So, getting back to the commentary, the P4 330 now takes the Michelin chicane, heading down towards the kink, as the Mark IV just tops out at 205th gear as he hits the braking zone, coming down to the first of the chicanes. The first of the chicane actually is called Forza Motorsport, believe it or not. We don't mention that here on the GT7 channel normally. Almost 2/3 of the length of the Mulsanne Straight is the lead now to the P4 330. As again the Mark IV comes out to 190, 195, 197. 198 mile an hour as he breaks into the Michelin chicane. The P330 is, or the P4, I keep calling it the P330, just feels right on the tongue. One we call P330, one we call the Mark IV. That would be much easier, wouldn't it? But no, we have the P4 and the Mark IV. Couldn't be harder. So, Indianapolis this corner. And this one is Arnage. I wish I'd learnt that before we actually started the series. You never go. Never claim to be a technical knowledge master person, if you see what I mean. So, coming round, the P4, 330, is on lap 6. There looks to be 3 minutes 10 seconds left of the race. That's roughly what there is. There's gonna have to be a last lap. We're gonna have to push it to lap 7. The lead for the P4 is 44 seconds over the second place car. And for the Mark 40, it looks like a lead of roughly 3 minutes 32, which is quite a surprise. That's almost a lap lead for the Mark IV. But head to head against the P4. The P4's got this. It's coming into the final time. We'll pass the actual finish line when it's not to finish the race. The penultimate time across the line. Here we go. Fastest lap of the race so far is a 4:04 to Mr. Muller. The P4 runs across the line. Oh, and spins it, loses it on the grass. What more do you want to set up a final run through? Is that the mistake that levels it? That's one mistake each. We've had the pit lane entry issue for the Mark IV, and now we've got a spin on the main straight. As he makes his way up to Dunlop Bridge, the Mark IV just comes into the start-finish straight. Fastest lap of the race still sits with the P4 as he leaves the circuit across the grass. Oh, he's finding it really tricky on this wet part of the track. So the Mark IV now comes through the second chicane, comes across the start-finish line, and he is actually visibly closing the gap. He comes across the start-finish line, it's still very wet here. Still very wet. And he makes the same mistake as the P4 does, but he goes way off the track into the gravel. He looks to actually just have to pull a spin, but he's getting overtaken by cars coming out of the pit lane. Both cars making the same mistake. There must be oil on the track or something. That's the excuse. So the P4 getting back to the head, is just settling himself down, heading into Forza Motorsport chicane. I think we said it twice, but I think we got away with it. The Mark IV now comes round to Tetra Rouge, and he has a P4 330 behind him. The fastest flying lap for the Mark IV is a 4:16.517. The P330 arrives at the Michelin chicane, and he spins it, hits the fence backwards. So it's still wet down there. As we said, there would be fear that it was too early to take the dry tyres. It looks like they're battling close enough to try and get this as a really close finish. There's a queue of cars trying to get past the old Mark IV, and they push him off the track. We saw the P330 hit him, and he's been reset just back from where he was. That was a real shame. Is that the difference? Is this going to be a lot closer than it looks like? The P4 330 now heading down to the final time to go around Mulsanne. Never to run round the Mulsanne straight again, not in this race at least. Oh, and he spins it and loses it. Just coming off those wet curbs, he's got it round and onto the grass. This is not what we anticipate. This is close stuff. It's a nail biter. It looked like the P4 had really got this sewn up, but the conditions don't lend well to casual driving. They've got to really stick to that dry line. As they say, it's never over till the fat lady sings. I don't think it has to be a fat lady anymore, does it, to be honest? It could be anybody singing. Making his way round Indianapolis and then onto Arnage as he hits the gravel with the right-hand tyres, but he just keeps it in the right place. Oh, he's just cut across the apex. That's the second or third time he's had troubles braking for that corner. The Mark IV now thrashing its way up Golf, coming to brake. He's got a Corvette C2 behind him as he comes past him on the inside. That's not very friendly. That's a very difficult place to overtake. So the P4 now makes his way into the Porsche curves for the last time, as the Mark IV, which really has closed down on the back of the P330. Not to be able to see him yet, but he's going to take these last 3 or 4 corners, and then it looks like the inevitable win. It's going to be a change of history. The P4 is going to win the 1967 recreated custom race for Gran Turismo and the Widdowmaker channel, as he comes round to now see the start-finish straight in the distance. The Ferris wheel spinning away nicely, goes past the entrance to the start-finish straight, and the P330 comes through the last to second chicane, now through the last chicane, takes the corner, and he looks to see up the flag. Where it is, it waving, there it is. The P4 330 takes the finish. First place, anybody expect that? And here we have it. The Mark IV coming down just some 10 to 15 seconds back. Never did manage to overtake it, but wins the race. Everybody else is actually finished. He's some 3 minutes ahead, but in second place to the overall. As he comes through the line, there he is. The Mark IV finishes with a change of history. And there we have it, folks. It doesn't matter which way it was written. What we were trying to do is have some fun, try and find a way to change the attitude when grinding to make it enjoyable. And for me, I really did enjoy that series. As we move on to the next update, which has just been announced, I'd like to say thank you for everyone. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.